No extra charge for the tuning. But if we don't tune, you might want your money back. So.
That's right.
Plays real hard.
Hard driving, no doubt. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's so much great history on the Stanley Brothers. Gary Reed, our friend that kind of did the Carter Stanley one-man show here earlier today up there. He's amazing. He knows such great history of the Stanley Brothers. To have never got to meet Carter in person, but he's really been a great study and a wonderful historian for the Stanley Brothers, all things Stanley. And so I appreciate him a lot. Got to meet him a couple of weeks ago. We were out with Larry Sparks and Ralph too, doing some shows down in Virginia, in the Clinch Mountain Boys. And it was great to get to tell some great Stanley Brothers stories and Ralph stories. There's a lot to tell. And there's quite a few Stanley stories in my book. And especially the first night me and Keith Whitley went out on the road with Ralph. Now we'd met Ralph. Ralph had a flat tire on the bus, and we had gone to see him in Fort Gay, West Virginia. I'd like to say it was a club, but it was just a beer joint, okay? It was just, get honest and real here. A club is something, you know, they never called them clubs around home. A club was something you hit something with, you know.
Yeah, right.
But a beer joint was a place, if you didn't have a knife, they'd issue you one when you walked in the front door. And anyway, we were too young to go in there by ourselves, so Dad took us. Good old Dad, man, he was always there. My dad, I loved him so much. And there's some great stories about Dad in that book too, some of his sayings. Dad was the kind of guy that would always say, now son, measure twice and cut once.
Right.
That's just good old horse sense. That's common sense. I think they need that in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Measure twice, cut once, okay? Yeah, that's good stuff. Anyway, it's just good measure to live by. And but he was fine. But he took us over there to see Ralph, because Ralph had just hired a fellow named Roy Lee Sanders to sing lead. Larry Sparks had just left, and so Roy Lee was going to take Larry's place playing guitar and singing, and Roy just sounded so much like Carter, and so we went to see him, and we got over there, and the club owner, beer joint owner, excuse me, let's make this right here, he knew that me and Dad played music. He had seen us maybe in Louisa, across the river over there in Louisa, Kentucky, where I went to school. And so anyway, he said, did y'all bring you stringed instruments? And we said, well, yeah, but we didn't figure we'd need to play. Well, you need to get them out right now. Ralph's going to be about 45 minutes late. So the old beer joint was full of people, and they was getting restless. So anyway, we jumped up there, and the only songs me and Keith knew was Stanley Brothers songs. Now that was not a good thing when the man, Ralph Stanley, is going to be walking in at any minute listening to what you're doing, listening to his songs through other mouths, youngster mouths. So anyway, about 30 minutes later, boy, we was up there just singing our little hearts out and playing, and I was playing some fiddle back in them days too, and so we was doing a lot of their tunes, and here comes Ralph, just walking right in, and wishing that he would have went on to the dressing room. No, he didn't. He just had to pull up a bar stool and just sit over there and look at us. And I could see him over there. It's like, Ralph, please go, please don't let. I mean, from any direction I looked, I could see Ralph sitting out there. God, it was just, I was so embarrassed. And so after 10 or 15 minutes, he headed on back to the dressing room, but Ralph told me later that he really thought when he pulled up that they were playing old Stanley Brothers songs on the jukebox, and oh God, they just made our hearts so light and happy, and it kind of wanted to make our heads swell a little bit. But my mama, she was not she knew how to deflate that head of yours if it got to be a little big, and anyway, but I just getting to be with the Stanleys and be with Ralph was really something that I cherish. Getting to grow up in the Stanley University of learning that music, and that was something that those were really formative years for me when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. And anyway, we're going to do some songs that they recorded per request. We were asked to do a segment of the show dedicated to the Stanley Brothers and certainly Ralph and his passing a year ago today. So I know we were in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'll remember it well. We were playing at Spirit Square when we found out that Ralph had passed, and so Ralph too called, and his little voice was just so trembling, and he said, "We've lost Dad." I said, "Now, Ralph, you haven't lost your dad. If something's lost, you don't know where it's at. Your daddy is in heaven now, so he ain't lost, okay? Your dad prepared his life to go to heaven when he passed, and so he ain't lost." And I think that really gave Ralph some comfort, Ralph too, and because it's the truth, you know. People think that, you know, when you leave here, you're just lost. You know, well, I'm sorry you lost your dad. Well, I didn't lose my dad. I know where he's at. I'm gonna go see him someday. Now, how's that? So, anyway, here's one of the first songs I ever remembered hearing the Stanley Brothers sing. They were on the King label by the time I got old enough to really listen to the radio and hear the current Stanley Brothers songs that they were doing. It was later on in my life that I went way back to the Columbia and Mercury stuff and really found the honey. Yeah, that's the stuff I really love a lot. So here's Riding the Midnight Train. Satisfied. I've tried and tried so many times, even without goodbye. I'm riding on that midnight train, my head's a hanging low. These awful blues will follow me wherever I may go.